You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast, specifically to Beast Over Burden. I'm Niki Sims, exclusive coach and nutrition coach at Barbell Logic, also the chief experience officer. With me is Andrew Jackson.
Howdy.
As well, he is an exclusive coach and nutrition coach, and he is the chief operations officer. And thinking about today, Andrew, I know that you've trained for a very long time in many kind of different ways. You've done CrossFit, you've been a rower, and I think now in my late 30s, as you would say, I'm no longer in my mid 30s. One reflects a bit more. I am actually specifically curious to hear from you, like in this phase of your training, having seen you go through like body weight changes and then this like gnarly back thing that was preventing training as you knew it. At this stage in your life, what keeps you training? What motivates you right now?
I think the thing that I still enjoy in the moment, I think there's two different aspects of motivation that I feel. One is that if I don't train, I just feel like crap.
Yeah.
I know that if I don't exercise, there's going to be about 3 or 4 days before I just feel like an absolute turd sandwich. And, and so...
When's the last time you felt like a turd sandwich from not training?
Oh, man. I don't know. It's probably some holiday where I couldn't train.
Yeah.
You know, it's about day 4. I usually feel like I'm about to just, my skin is crawling or like whatever. I keep blanking on that phrase. Full disclosure, I'm operating on like 4 hours of sleep right now. So my brain does not seem to be connecting dots very well. But anyways, I just feel like I want to rip out of my body and I got to do something.
Get pent up energy. Yeah.
And I would say maybe even higher priority is existential dread of the amount of delayed onset muscle soreness
for real
that I would feel if I don't squat at least once a week. That is just always on top of mind, that I got to squat. I just have to squat at least once a week. And if I don't, I know pain is coming.
And that's interesting because you know that you are going to work out in the future.
Oh, yeah.
You know that because you know to be afraid of the soreness.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But so there's still something underneath that makes sure that you are going to squat in the future. You're just trying to make that time shorter so that you're not punished by it.
Yeah.
But do you like think about like 70-year-old you? Do you think about...
For sure. Yeah. Well, I just see it as part of my life. I mean, I think I've quoted that Arnold Schwarzenegger interview somewhat recently where he was talking about, he just finds the question strange because nobody asks him if he's going to brush his teeth today or if he's going to eat breakfast or if he's going to take a shower.
Yeah.
It's at that level in my life at this point that I consider it part of my life. I think it always will be. And that is independent of weight going up on the bar at this point. I mean, I feel some sense of satisfaction when I see progress on the bar. I don't know if it's just recent injuries or setbacks or reaching a stage in life where my program just doesn't tend to constantly go up, that I'm very detached from needing the weight to go up. And I often go through sessions where I don't even really care how much weight is on the bar. I just want it to be hard. And I want it to be something that I can practice. I'm constantly drawn to practice. And I always have been. I mean, that was true growing up, even as a kid. I was always competitive, but I liked practice and, almost more than the game itself or the race.
I'm giggling to myself because you've told me so many stories of racing people and being competitive and improving your paper route. And it seems like the competitive nature is very much a driving force for you. But it seems like now the best way to be competitive is with yourself in a way.
Yeah. And even then, I think the competition was about seeing what was possible. And that I think is certainly a common thread, has been throughout my life, is that
I love that.
I was curious and kind of driven to test my limits and find the edge of my capabilities and see if I could push them. I'm a habitual boundary pusher. Funny story. I can't remember if I told this story on the podcast before, but I used to work at Dairy Queen. One of my best friends was the manager, and I got in trouble because I was a cook staying in the back and all my buddies would be up in the front. You know, most of Dairy Queen business is ice cream and soft serve and stuff like that. So I'd have a lot of downtime in the back, which is not good for somebody like me because I would just get into trouble. And so there came a point where my buddy said, "Thou shalt not pass." He basically pulled the Gandalf.
He drew a line on the floor, right?
Yeah, there was like a line between the back where the kitchen was and the front where he said, "Can't cross that line." I said, "All right."
Oh my God. He gave you the boundary.
He gave me the boundary. So what did I do? I put my toes, the tip of my toes on that line, and then I leaned forward so that I wasn't crossing the line, but I could stick my head just far enough out to mess with all my buddies in the front.
Oh, you must have been so obnoxious to...
You might be surprised to hear that I got fired from that job eventually. But I still hold the record for having clocked out before closing time, which is nearly impossible as a cook. But I think I did tell that story before. Anyways, definitely a habitual boundary pusher, which has its light and dark sides.
Yeah, I was going to say the light side is that you will take a system that has had a lot of thought behind it to drive improvement, and you will say, how can we make this better?
Right.
What can we shave off? What can we improve? Like you're just pushing it further and further, taking out waste, as you call it, adding efficiency, adding value. So you're always progressing it. I would say that's definitely on the light side.
Yeah, and it keeps me interested with every single rep of training still to this day. Every single rep of the squat, I'm looking for that balance, that perfect balance, and trying to find, it's like when you hit a sweet golf shot or, you hit the ball on the sweet spot of the bat. There's that feeling where you're just like, yes, that was it. I nailed it. I got the perfect balance. And I'm just like chasing that feeling with every single rep. And that's what I find motivates me right now in the moment. So I talked about all those kind of like external factors that keep me showing up. But in the moment, the thing that I find stimulating mentally and still a challenge, even all these years later, is that I think I'm still learning more about the model. I continue to refine the mental model. So I think when I first started, I had a very crude like spotlight on a mental model, a very two-dimensional model. And the more that I do this, the more that I learn, I feel like I'm getting smaller, rays of light, but they're fleshing out this model to be more multifaceted, maybe a three-dimensional, maybe it's a tesseract. It's a five-dimensional model of lifting.
I just know that from movies. That in Transformers, that's an actual thing. Michael Bay didn't just come up with that.
Google you'll have to Google Carl Sagan talking about the fourth dimension.
Okay, sounds good. I'm sure I'll watch all of it. So Andrew he's so sweet. He sends me all these wonderful YouTube videos and things that he knows I would find interesting. But I have this weird block with a YouTube video where I just will not watch them. I'm terrible about watching them. So that's kind of a joke between he and I, is he'll send me something really cool and then I won't watch it.
Yeah, it's a sign of respect.
I prefer it when Andrew explains it for me. So what would you say like influences you? What makes you maybe like figure out how you want to, point your light, or how you want to observe something? Like what are external influences in maybe your motivations or your direction?
In keeping with that learning and boundary pushing sort of thought process, it's ideas that I get from various sources, where it could be going down a YouTube rabbit hole, could be often lately, it seems to be Instagram seems to be like I'm a visual learner. I think some people like Twitter as a way to start a thread or an idea. So I'll look for like a kernel of an idea, or just like follow certain people that tend to put out good content with ideas.
Like who?
Man, it's sort of controversial. I mean, names I would throw out there: Brad Schoenfeld, Chris Beardsley,
Lane Norton,
the RPS guys, Mike Zertel, I think puts out pretty interesting content. And then there's other people that pop up from time to time just in the social media network that will give me an idea that gets a thought going, or maybe leads me to a study or leads me to some other book or source that appeals to me, because mental models, and I actually got this idea from Dr. Sullivan when he presented at a conference a few years ago that was really helpful for me, actually, that he kind of explained the idea of a model being inherently incorrect or limited, but that it can be still useful as a way of helping you think. And so I'm building that, 3-4 dimensional mental model, and I get interested in things that I'll see, I'll read or hear about that help me think better about a lift. Those are the things that I think influence me now. And I've been doing this now long enough as a coach and a lifter that what I tend to respond to are those things that seem theoretically feasible in a way that I've seen work in practical application.
Oh, cool.
So that I can't put enough value on, that when you're first starting out, there's no BS detector. Like you don't have any way of being like, because there's so much stuff out on the internet that's, some study or some theoretical thing that
this is the way,
or
like this is the solution.
Studies have shown
if you're doing it other than this, it's not right, but it's not helping you think about it really.
Right. And you have no way of differentiating between the two. And so now I have definitely a bit of a filter and sort of sanity check to say, well, that's an interesting idea. Let's see, how does it fit in or change my model? And that's really what I think I'm doing, mentally, is refining and constantly building on that model. One of the biggest, like as a concrete example of that, is the idea of bar path. When I first started out, I was really fixated on a very simplistic mental model of the bar path needing to be vertical over the middle of the foot. And to the point where I would record myself, even with an empty bar, expecting the bar to be perfectly vertical over the middle of the foot.
Yeah, totally have done the same.
Which was because my mental model was wrong. And some people call that the master cue, to imagine the bar moving in a slot over the middle of the foot. I think that's an excellent external cue for a coach to give a lifter who's not watching themselves on video in real time or trying to correct themselves to look a certain way, because it gives them a problem to solve in their head, which should feel like the weight is balanced over the middle of their foot. But a more precise mental model of what's actually going on there is that the combined center of mass of the body and the barbell are moving in a line that's straight up and down. Now, if you're squatting 1,000 pounds, that's going to be damn near close to the barbell moving up and down in a straight line. But if you're squatting an empty bar and you weigh 200 pounds, it's nowhere near the barbell. It's going to be a lot closer to your ass.
If you did try and make it move in a straight line, the way you squat as you warm up and weight is going to look different.
It's going to look different
every set.
And you won't be in balance. In fact, you will be undermining the intent of the master cue, which is to be balanced over your middle of the foot. But balance, by definition, is keeping the combined center of mass over your center of balance, which is roughly the middle of your foot. So that's a concrete example of how my mental model has evolved from a very two-dimensional, one big spotlight on a idea of what I was trying to do while I'm lifting, to now something that's much more refined. Now, I can't see the combined center of mass. So again, at heavy weight, the barbell is a decent proxy for it. But as a lifter, more importantly, and what I would encourage anybody listening to this to do, is to concentrate as the constant feedback mechanism on balance in your full foot. Burgos just wrote a great article about this recently, about squat mechanics. But anyways, that's a concrete example of how my mental model is just much more evolved from where it started.
Yeah.
And that type of learning, that kind of evolution is what fascinates me, because I'm still finding little things like that 10 years later.
And that's got to have been influenced by your experience as a coach. You've watched a million D squats by this time and have kept clients and lost clients.
Yeah. And as a lifter, because I completely screwed it up.
Right. That too. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like I would get to the point where I was like almost falling down, trying to keep the bar and trying to make my squat look a certain way, which is another variation of that, is that people will see, oh, this person looks like that when they squat. I should try to look like that.
Right.
It doesn't work.
And I've seen that come up a lot in the squat lately with, you and I have talked about this a bit with back extension, is, okay, how much can I extend my back to make sure that the bar is moving in a straight line by the time I get to the bottom?
Right.
And I've seen that over time lead to some squats that don't look great and squats that don't feel great over a long amount of time of having a spine that's constantly in extension.
Yeah.
A little bit too much under load.
Right. And that's another one that Burgos talked about in his article that is a little tricky to think about from a new lifter perspective, because what that implies, what we were just talking about, is that the squat will actually look different on your warm-up rep to your full loaded rep. So your body weight squat will look different. Your back angle will be different. The constant for it all will be the balance in your foot, but the biomechanics of your lift are going to be different. Your back is going to get more and more vertical as you get more weight on the bar.
Yeah.
And that can be really confusing to somebody who's either a new coach or a new lifter trying to think, oh, my chest needs to be pointing at a certain place, or,
Yeah.
Again, my knees need to be in a certain place, or my back angle needs to look a certain way, when it's different based on how much weight is on the bar. Now, again, once you're up at, if you're squatting 400, 500, 600, 700, 800 pounds, which very few of our listeners are probably doing, it starts to look pretty consistent. But going from 0 or empty bar to 300 or 400 pounds is going to change.
You said balance over, or feeling balanced in your foot is kind of a good driving force. Would you say that's true at any weight?
Yes. That is the constant for any compound movement where you're standing on your feet and your goal is to produce as much force as possible. There are a few exceptions where if your goal is maximizing range of motion and mechanical tension, you might not be in total balance. Like an RDL, for example, you might let your toes.
Yeah, I was going to say, like an RDL, if you're training your glutes, yeah, you're probably going to come back to your heels and then come back to your midfoot.
But if your goal is to produce more force, thou shalt be balanced.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fundamental principle and this is why you can lift more weight with machines, is that you are constrained to being balanced, more so at least.
Yeah.
And so that's why I get fascinated with the focus on being balanced with every single rep, because I know that is the thing. Solving that problem is going to put me in the right position while also enabling me to produce more force. Therefore, I'm going to get stronger.
That feels rewarding.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah. So it really does become meditation in a certain way.
Totally.
I was thinking about this during a bit of a deload week where, those deload weeks I think can be sometimes mentally challenging and still physically challenging because you're probably a bit beat up, but you really get to, or I think a lot of value comes from feeling each rep.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing it for more hypertrophy work, that's not lifting a heavy weight. It's like, well, you kind of wonder, what's the point? Well, the point is muscular contraction. Can you feel the muscles that you're intending to be worked? Can you feel them contract to their fullest extent? And take the time to appreciate that, not just blasting through a set. And that allows you to get a lot of value out of a deload, let yourself recover, and still do the work that needs to be done, even if it's not as much as you did the week before. I love the meditation of it.
Yeah, I like that. Or focusing on how much acceleration bar speed you can create. So even if it's a lighter weight, you can accelerate it more. That's a fun one to work on. But I totally agree that it's a mental meditation that it's harder to do at lighter weight. That's the beauty of heavy weight in a lot of ways, is that you're probably not going to be able to pay attention to too much else when you got 400 or 500 pounds on your back. How's that been for you now that you've been doing these lighter reps lately? Do you find that meditation to be challenging in a different way?
I do. In my head, I think of how much muscular contraction can I get done today? And I try to really maximize every rep. Like an example of a workout that I did on Saturday was on the leg press. I did 6 sets of 22 with 90 seconds of rest in between each round. The previous week, I did 6 sets of 20. And I made the mistake of telling my coach this was pretty doable until the last 5 reps of each set. And then it was a real mental effort. And then she added 2 reps to each set for the same weight. So it's fun because it was a challenge. And of course, I wanted to do well. And I remember how hard it was last week. And I was excited for the difficulty of it. Like, I like the difficulty of it. And with the higher rep sets, you kind of have to have a buy-in.
Right.
So I imagine like the first like 5 reps are the buy-in. They're setting me up for the difficulty that's coming. And the difficulty in my head is where I'm creating growth. And that's what really motivates me is like each rep that I do, make it count, make my body want to grow more muscle. And that I find to be really motivating because I like the difficulty of it that makes me believe that I'm doing a good job, which I don't know if that's a great mental model to have. I have kind of a link between working hard equals better, being difficult equals better, and that's not always the case. But I think that's what I enjoy about my training right now is that I get to go into that really challenging zone. It's different with it not being like, okay, let me find a new one arm on my squat, because that's kind of up in the air. You know, I had tried a bunch of times in my career to squat 300 pounds and I only did it once, you know, but on my workouts now, like I know I'm going to get close to failure or I'm going to complete the sets. And there's no like certificate of award of a new 1RM or anything. But the difficulty and the work is extremely motivating for me. I love that physical challenge.
Now, are you still tracking more reps at the same weight, more weight at the same reps? Like there's still progressive overload?
I think so. I see tonnage creep up, but we do different spreads, different types of leg training, different leg press exercises. So it's really not a copy and paste and add 5 pounds all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah, I haven't spent too much time trying to look into the actual structure of the program because we also, when we first got into this program, she was like, let me know how hard it is. That seemed to be, and she'll give me guidance on this needs to be moderate, this needs to be to failure, this needs to be close to failure. And I get guidance there. So it seems like lots of reps and keeping an eye on level of difficulty and fatigue more than anything. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But I can tell having done, you know, I track the numbers, obviously. I don't just write an emoji down or something. Like I track the weights and I know like, oh, okay, so leg extension at this weight, this was really tough. And then a couple weeks later, I'll do it again at that week and it was way less tough. So I know moving at certain weights and certain rep ranges feel better or they feel worse. So I get that kind of somewhat objective, and I guess subjective.
And what are your motivations and inspirations at this point?
Let's see. For my training, I'm really motivated by being a super jacked lady. Like I have this I think it's like a state of being a super jacked lady where like you walk around, people can tell you work out. You just like, you're different. And you and I have noticed this in gyms now where like we go to the gym, we're just like, dang, there are a lot of fit ladies everywhere. Like this is a new thing. And I think that's really cool. But then when you leave the gym, you don't see that very much.
Well, just to clarify, when you say fit, I mean, ladies have been going to the gyms for decades at this point, but I'm going to just go ahead and use the terminology muscle mommies out there. Like, these are like jacked. And I would wager, at least at the general public type gyms, the percentage of muscle mommy, like when I say abnormal, I don't mean that they are abnormal people, but I'm saying abnormal with relative to like average society.
Yeah.
That there's like more of those abnormally jacked women in the gym now than the dudes. Like the dudes showing up look like average gym bros, but the average lady at the gym lately that I'm noticing just looks like they're like legit lifters.
It really stands out. Yeah. I've been noticing that too. And I go to a 24-hour fitness here in Orange County, and you can imagine that people are very good looking. They are, which is kind of cool. And I get motivated now by seeing more of these muscle mommies in the weights area at the gym. It's really funny. Like We kind of sometimes show up wearing like the same outfits, which is kind of funny, buying from the same, big booty stretchy pants stores. But it's kind of cool because I look at them and I'm motivated by them. Like I see them just like having erectors and having traps, and where they're not just, bottom heavy training their butt all the time. They have shoulders and they have lats. And that motivates me because I want to be more than them.
A little competitive.
I'm kind of competitive in that way where I want to be more of a muscle mommy. That's the phrase that we're using. But I know that I'm like achievement kind of driven. I was thinking about this. I don't know if that came from being a middle child, but like I want to stand out and I want to be acknowledged for being more than someone in some way.
Well, like you said, when you go back into the wild outside the gym, it's still very rare.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's, in the gym, there's maybe like, 5 ladies to be like, hell yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to do a little bit better for you. But hell yeah, I'm really jazzed that you're here. Like I love it. I really do enjoy it. But yeah, going out in the wild, you don't see it as much.
I like how not the gym is the wild now. Like the gym is society, culture, modern civilization. Outside the gym, wilderness.
So ridiculous. Well, that's where we feed. Because I'm motivated by them, I think that validates me to be able to motivate other people. And like what you were saying at another time is like, sometimes I forget that a lot of people listen to this podcast. And, I don't always appreciate how much influence we have sitting here on our microphones, but we have the ability to change people's lives. And I think embodying that is a way to inspire and help people see maybe part of that could be in them too. And I think that feels really good because the emotional or the really deep emotional gratification that I get is when a client feels something different and when they feel change and when they're proud of themselves. I enjoy my own progress and stuff, but true internal, like glowing happiness is when a client does that for themselves.
Yeah.
That's super motivating. Yeah. So like that tends to be something that influences me too, is like, okay, this is working for them. This is not working for them. Like, how do I need to change my methods based on what my client is getting or not getting out of this? And that seems to be like I think you're really good at pulling from external resources. I don't think I've tapped into how to use those tools really well. I'm more of like let me try this and get my own feedback, and let me try this and get my own feedback. And I think things kind of innately enter my brain, probably subconsciously from you feeding me really great things on Instagram and YouTube and having conversations with you. But I think I'm more of like a hands-on, tell me if this is working, like really in the moment kind of trial and error.
Well, that's the true test ground for me. I mean, I'm inspired with ideas externally, but I would agree that the lab is with the client.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things and most influential of having done this for now 6 or 7 years every single day is that no matter, even if a study comes out and says it's statistically significant to do X, you still have to figure out whether that's going to work with the individual or how the individual is going to respond. There's still way more variation at the individual level that has to be tried. Just because it works for a lot of the population does not necessarily mean it's going to work really well.
Right.
The individual response is still highly varied. There's still, I think, some foundational principles that I can go back to, but when it comes down to the details day to day, there's still I would totally agree and do the same trial and error at the individual level for sure.
Yeah, because the human being the experiment, so to speak, while anatomically we can be pretty similar in our functions, like the work that they're going to do and the results that they're going to get based on that work and, genetics, as much as those can be unique, that will really influence the result that you get. So as the coach, you have to really be able to figure out, what is this client going to do based on what they care about?
Right.
Once you have those, then you can go somewhere.
Right.
And if they don't know those things, then it's funny, we were just talking about this with Matt clients who are just kind of non-compliant. And I was thinking that a missed workout or a missed nutrition check-in is kind of a passive-aggressive way to say this isn't right for me. And not to make that a negative, but it is an indirect way of saying, I don't care about this and it's not working for me. And when that shows up, that's a really useful thing to pay attention to. And it's an indication that you're not on the same page and you need to figure out how to get on the same page. And I've recently run into a client or two where they don't know what's important to them. And I know that because every time we get on a call, it's something different. It's because they tell me something and then they do something completely different. And when that is not clear for an individual, there's no way a coach can have a great relationship with that client because you're just trying to kind of herd a cat who doesn't know what they want.
I heard an interesting idea yesterday that we should consider behavior a language. And often we fixate on what people say as the language, but really their behavior is telling a much more powerful message than, well, their words are.
Yeah, big time.
People with high integrity, those things are often on the same page.
Yeah.
But not because it's malicious.
Totally unrelated.
But, I'm not saying that's malicious that they're low integrity, but just conceptually, if integrity is to do what you say you're going to do and somebody is frequently not aligned in that way, then I would say that the behavior is the obvious truth.
Yeah.
I think it's a big reason why I wanted to add the missed workout notification.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's great the way you framed it. How did you say it again? It's a passive-aggressive way of saying we're not on the same page, maybe?
Yeah.
And again, passive-aggressive has some negative connotations, but maybe it's just a indirect way of saying that.
It's non-confrontational.
And that's why I like getting those notifications, because it's a trigger to me, a notification to me to say, this person needs something different. This person needs some sort of attention.
Yeah.
It might be minor. Sometimes you get one and it's like, oh yeah, I just need to shift the workout a day. Somebody got sick or blah, 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 blah. But then if you're seeing that, 3, 4, 5, 6 times.
When it's the constant behavior. Yeah.
Something needs to change. Totally agree.
Well, I don't know what we're going to call this episode, guys. You know now because it's been released, but welcome to our brains. When Andrew and I decided to bring the podcast back, a lot of it was because we know we get to connect with a lot of people, but also because we talk about it so much. We'll work all day and then we'll go have a glass of wine or a glass of beer after work and we just can't help ourselves but talk about it. And we were like, well, you know what? Maybe we should talk about it.
That did feel like pretty much a normal afternoon conversation for sure.
Welcome to our happy hours, even though we're both just drinking coffee and it's in the morning time. Anyway, Andrew, any closing remarks?
Here's to muscle mommies.
Yeah. Indeed. Here's to muscle mommies, and really glad that you're all at the gym, and I'm inspired by how much muscle is out there. I really, really am. It's so much fun. Well, thanks for listening to the Barbell Logic podcast. If you think that this brought you value, I hope it did. Leave us a review, give us some stars, and maybe share it with someone who you think it would bring some value to. And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.